A base.
And does that look
Welcome
okay?
Shahayim.
Does this camera look okay? Is it focused?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay.
Welcome Shahayim.
Yeah.
82B.
No, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Chulu, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. It's like 3 lines from the top. This is a quote from the Mishnah.
Oh, so no.
Whenever you have 2 dots like that,
Wait a
you see
second.
a
I
colon.
might not find this.
No, pay base. I'm sorry, did I say Amad base? No, it's Amad Aleph. Pay base 82A.
Thank you. Oh yeah, perfect.
Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Shmuel.
Yeah, I'm Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So, what Rabbi Akiva said in the Mishnah was that any blood that came inside the sanctuary is invalid. And the Chachamim say that it's only a chatas that entered into the sanctuary. And Rabbi Eliezer added in the Asham as well. So we're talking about normally blood is put on the outer altar. If
Outside of the Heichel you're talking about?
which is outside, which is in the courtyard.
Okay.
Let's get another Gemara.
Morning.
You want to follow in the English or in
Yeah.
the? Okay. Someone else. So normally, the blood is put on the outer altar. If it goes inside the sanctuary, that's not where it belongs. The question is, what happens then? So Rabbi Akiva says that it's invalid. The sacrifice is invalid.
Why would they bring it inside?
Not the blood.
They brought the blood
About the
inside.
steak,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, it was. We're gonna see. Actually, there's a difference if it was done by mistake or not. I'll be in the next Mishnah. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva says, "V'chulu etc." Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel. Again, Shmuel is the first generation of Amiraim in Babylonia. He lived in a city called Nardoi. So his student was Rabbi Yehuda. It was first by Rav, then after Rav died, he went to Shmuel. And Rav Yehuda is the founder of the yeshiva in Pumbedisa because Nardoi was destroyed.
What's the difference between Pumbedisa and Nardoi?
After Nardoi, they moved to Pumbedisa. Pumbedisa
it's
lasted
in
for a
Iraq.
long time. Yeah,
okay.
It's all in the same. So he says like this: Mashal Amad Avadaimer. What is this similar to? What is this comparable to? What Rabbi Kiva is saying. It says LaTalmud Shemasag L'Rabbi B'Chamin. Talking about a student that's mixing a drink, a hot drink for his teacher. V'amalei Mezaygli. The teacher tells him, "Mix for me a drink." Now he's already doing that. He says, "Mix for me a drink." So the student says, "Amalei." The student asks the teacher, "Bameh, what would you like, hot or cold?" So Amalei, the teacher says to him, "Lei b'chamin ano asukim." Are we not already involved with hot? So, if I would have wanted you if I want you to make a hot drink for me, I wouldn't have said anything, because that's what you're doing. I just make a drink. But you should have understood that on your own.
Right.
So now I'm telling you that bein b'chamed bein b'tzaynen. Now I'm going to say that you can make me a hot drink or a cold drink. So hachanami, here also. What does this have to do with us? We're talking about the blood of the sacrifice that goes inside. So it says, Michti b'chatas askinan. We're dealing with the chatas. We're talking about the psukim in the beginning of Parshas Tzav. The pasuk says, any chatas that the blood is brought into the sanctuary to atone in the holy should not be eaten. It should be burnt with fire. So we're dealing with the chatas. Chatas the Kasav Rachman Alamali. Why does it have to go ahead and specify Aman Pei Beis? Aman Pei Beis Amad Aleph. Why does it have to go ahead and say the word chatas? It's about 8 lines from the top. Elalav, rather not. Chatas kaminala. Elalav chatas kamina ela kol kachim. What it means to say, the fact that it adds in, that it specifies the chatas, is it's coming to tell me actually to be more inclusive. That not only everything else, but even the chatas. I'm just trying to think of an example.
Well, this is a chomer, and you're including. You're saying the fact.
I don't know if it's the chumrah aspect of it. It's like this. we just gave an example of someone that doesn't need to specify something. Someone's making a drink, a hot drink, and someone says, "Can I have some?" That the master says, "Can I have a drink?" He doesn't have to say, "Can I have a hot drink?" He doesn't have to specify, because that's what he's doing. So the Torah says that the Torah is discussing a chatas, and then it says that any chatas that the blood goes into the sanctuary to atone should not be eaten; it should be burnt. It means it makes it invalid. So why does it have to say any chatas? You were dealing with a chatas. It must be that it's coming to tell you that really we're referring to all sacrifices. And I'm telling you that even a chatas. Now why does it have to add in even a chatas? All sacrifices may be the same. Why specifically even a chatas? What it means is because certain times a chatas does go into the sanctuary. There are certain chata'is, in the plural, that do go into the sanctuary. If the community sins, the blood does go in. Yeah, if it's a community sin, if the Sanhedrin, or there's certain, it's called chatois apnimis or chatois anisrafim. The blood goes in the sanctuary, and then the flesh is taken out it's burnt outside of the courtyard. So those are special cases. We're saying that even though I have certain chatois that do go into the sanctuary, but if it doesn't belong in the sanctuary, even though it's a chatas, which has some exceptions, nevertheless it's invalid. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Now again, this opinion holds that all sacrifices, if the blood goes into the sanctuary, become invalid. If the blood goes into the heichal. So why does it say chatas? Even a chatas. That's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. But it really means all sacrifices. It's interesting because the pasuk says chatas, but it means even a chatas. Okay. Maska for Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua asked him a question. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua was many generations later, so it must mean he brought up this question, not asked directly to him, to Rav Yehuda. I doubt Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua was able to see Rav Yehuda. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua is in the time of Rav Papa. Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, that's a Talmidim of Rava. It's the end of the Amiran. It says Michti, let's see. It's Rabbi Kol Kodshim Lagabi Mizbeach Linyan Riku Shtifa. I know over there it's talking about a chatas, but if you look carefully, those verses say, today we have if you use a vessel for meat, so it becomes fleishik. If you use it for milk, it becomes milchik. In those days, if you used the vessel to cook a chatas, it would absorb the chatas, and it would have the limitations of a chatas, which is you only had one day to eat it. You would have to kosher it after every day. So if it was not kosherable, you would have to break the vessel, or if it was earthenware or something. So over there it discusses sacrifices that get absorbed into a vessel. What do you have to do? You have to clean it out. You have to do hagala. You have to kosher the vessel. It's not only talking about a chatas. It's talking about any sacrifice. And that's what those verses are referring to. Even though you said it's referring to a chatas. But we've learned that it's not specifically a chatas. It's any karban. So, chatas the kasav rachman alamali. So why does it say now the word chatas? You're talking about every karban over there. So Shema Mina chatasin miderchin aloi. It must mean that it's coming to tell me specifically a chatas. If you're talking about everything, and then you mention chatas, it must mean you're excluding everything else. If you're talking about chatas and you say chatas, then maybe you're referring to even a chatas, but you're referring to everything. But if you're talking about everything and then you mention chatas, then you must be excluding everything else. V'holei damya, this would only be similar to Talmud Shemazag L'Rabbi Bein B'cham Bein B'tzayna. There's a student we go back to another example here. A student that's mixing drinks, and some are hot, some are cold. So the master says, Al Timzigli Elachamin, should just mix for me a hot drink. Now it's very clear, he only wants a hot one, because he was dealing with everything before, so now he's limiting it to this. So, therefore, Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, according to his question, has to give another reason. Ela time of the Rabbi Akiva, why does Rabbi Akiva hold that any sacrifice that the blood enters inside the sanctuary becomes invalid when the pasuk only says the chatas becomes invalid? Mechatas v'chol chatas. It comes from the extra word kol chatas. And any chatas. that extra v'chol, which means any, and all, that's including. The Tanya, as it was taught in a brisa, it says in the pasuk chatas ainli ela chatas. I would only know that it's a chatas. Kachi minayin. How do you know that any other sacrifice that's of secondary holiness? How do you know that the same rule applies? Talmud Leimer kol chatas. It says any chatas. That kol is inclusive. Anything. Kachim kalim minayin. How do you know? Kachim. I'm sorry. We say kachim was the first question. How do you know the primary holy, the first holiness, the holy of holies? How do you know those sacrifices? It says kol chatas. Kachim kalim. How do you know that secondary level of holiness? Minayin tamalim vichol chatas. There's extra vav there. That's including even secondary holiness, which the same rule would apply. That if the blood goes into the sanctuary, it becomes invalid. So whether it's a chatas, whether it's kachim, whether it's kachim kalim, we're learning it from the word v'chol chatas, the vav, and then the kol and chatas. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. This is the words of Rabbi Kiva. Okay, so he has a brisa. It's very clear. It's very clear what the source is for Rabbi Akiva. Amalei Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Yossi Aglili responds to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi Aglili was like a student friend of Rabbi Akiva. Afilu atamar b'kalayim kula yeni shemelach al chatas. Tells Rabbi Akiva, even if you're going to bring inclusions every single day, the entire day, I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to listen. I'm only going to learn that it's only a chatas that becomes invalid if the blood enters into the sanctuary. Pasuk says chatas. Ainli ela chatas yachid. I would only know that it's a individual person's chatas, a private chatas. Chatas tzibur minayin. How do you know that if it's a community chatas? We bring a sin offering. Chatas is the sin offering that we bring a community offering on Rosh Chodesh. We bring a goat. It's considered a community sin offering. Talmud Leimer kol chatas. It says any chatas. Mainly ela chatas zachar. I only know a male chatas. Chatas nekeva minayin. How do you know a female chatas? Talmud Leimer vichol. Tells me and all.
I thought chatas was only female.
Excellent. Klape laya. It should be exactly the opposite. Chatas is only female. Very good. You see, you think exactly like the Gemara. They say Baruch Shekivanti. They say blessed is Hashem that I was able to think of what the Gemara is going to ask. Elahachi kamar. Rather, this is what it means. This is how it's supposed to be said. Ein li elachatas nekeva. I would only think a female chatas. Chatas zachar minayin. How do you know that it's even a male chatas? Because there is such a thing as a male chatas. I think which chatas was a male? Does it say in your notes over there? Maybe actually the goat on Rosh Chodesh was a male. I'm not sure about the Kohen Gadol's. I don't remember.
Chatas is female. Chatas is from male on the usual cases. See, Leviticus 4:23.
Oh, so it sends you to someplace. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Talmud Leimer v'chol chatas. So we know v'chol chatas. Okay. From v'chol, the extra vav and all. The Savar Rabbi Yossi Aglili Haikra Lahachi Yudasa. The Gemara asks that Rabbi Yossi Aglili uses this pasuk to teach me this, that the chatas, that the blood enters inside into the sanctuary is invalid. V'hatanya, but it was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, Rashi says to take out this word, Fisha Matzino. He's supposed to read it. Kol einin kula einin medaber el beparim anasrafim asirim anasrafim. Lisreif psuleim abei sabira v'lamed b'leisasei ala chilasei. This is very interesting. The pasuk says, any chatas that the blood is brought into the sanctuary to atone should not be eaten, it's burnt by fire. Now, that could be used to tell me that you've just invalidated a chatas. because you brought the blood inside when you shouldn't have. But it could also be telling me that there are two types of chatas. One, that the blood is brought in the outer altar, and there's another type of chatas it's called chatas apnimis, that the blood is brought inside the heichal, and it's not eaten; it's burnt outside the temple. It's chutz lazara. It's burnt outside. The pasuk may be telling me that you've invalidated a chatas. It may be telling me a general rule that all of those chatos that the blood is meant to be brought inside is not eaten, you burn it outside. And that's not invalidating, that's the actual halacha. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that pasuk is only talking about parim manisrafim usir manisrafim, those chatos that are burnt inside the sanctuary. It's not a mistake that's happening, it's telling me the rule of that's how it's done, that you bring the blood inside. Amrulai, chatos shenichnas dam lifnai v'lifnei minayin. They tell to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, how do you know that if the blood is brought inside, how do you know that it becomes puzzle? If the pasuk is not telling me that it becomes invalid, it's telling me the actual rule of the prescription of how that chatas is done, that you bring the blood inside and then you burn it outside. So how do you know that it becomes invalid? So he says, I know it from another place. By the inauguration of the temple, there was one point that Moshe gets angry because Aaron didn't eat the sacrifice, and it was in morning. So he says, did the blood go inside that you're not eating it? Which meant, did you mess it up? Did you mess it? Was the sacrifice messed up? So he says, Hein lehuva. He quotes, Rabbi Kiva says, I'll tell you, I know it from the inauguration ceremony, that when Aaron doesn't eat it, when Moshe was angry at him, he says, was the blood brought inside? That's why you're not eating it. Why didn't you eat the sacrifice? So from that you see that if the blood does get brought inside, it would have been invalid and you wouldn't be allowed to eat it. So that's where Rabbi Akiva learns it from. So that's where Rabbi Yossi Aglili learns it from. So now the question that the Gemara asked is, you're telling me that Rabbi Yossi Aglili learns it from V'chol Chatas. He doesn't learn it from there. He learns it from Hein Lehuva. He learns V'chol Chatas to tell me Param Anisrafim, to tell me just the regular rule. So the Gemara says, L'dvar of the Rabbi Akiva Kamar. The Brisa that says before that it's coming to teach me Chatas HaYachid, Chatas HaTzibur, that all of those are invalid, that was only a response to Rabbi Akiva. He's telling Rabbi Akiva that I'm not going to allow you to tell me that it's referring to all sacrifices. The most, it's referring to a Chatas. But that's what he was telling to Rabbi Akiva. But his own opinion is different. His own opinion is that he learns it from the inauguration ceremony, that if the blood gets brought inside, it would have been invalid. Okay. We're up to the Mishnah. Let's see if there's another Gemara.
That's fine. Smith is fine. I have
You good? Let's say there was a lot of blood, and the Kayan received the blood in two separate cups. Okay? The blood went outside the Beis Hamikdash, went outside the Azara. Becomes invalid. You can't use that blood. But you have another cup, you have a spare cup here. So Panimi Kasher. You can still use the blood from inside that did not go out, and the sacrifice is still good. It's still valid, because you have one remaining cup that was there. Let's say you took one of the cups inside the sanctuary. We know before that could be a problem. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili machshir. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that it's kosher. Machshir b'chitzon. He says that the outer one, the cup that's left outside, is still good. In other words, you can still sprinkle from that cup, that's the spare cup that didn't go inside, and make the carbon still valid. But the Chacham say no. Once the blood was brought inside, the entire sacrifice is invalid.
So one goes in, one cup one cup goes in the heichal, one stays out,
Right.
and the one that stays out, according to the Chum, is also puzzle.
Yeah. The sacrifice becomes invalid. Like we mentioned
Oh,
before,
the,
that
the carbon becomes
becomes invalid.
Okay. Puzzle.
Amar Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Yossi Aglili brings some logic here to. This way I can keep you. Ma in b'makim shamachshava peiseles b'chutz lo yasa samshir kiyotze makim she'ena machshava peiseles b'fnim in idin shalei nasa samshir kenichnas. Okay, he says like this. The person thinks while he's sprinkling the blood, or while he's doing one of the services, he has intention that he's going to take blood outside of the Azara. The entire sacrifice becomes invalid. Just the intention invalidates the sacrifice. However, let's say a person doesn't have the wrong intention, but he actually takes the blood outside the temple. Not the intention of taking it. He actually takes it out. So that was the first case of the Mishnah, where we said that if you have 2 cups, you take one of them out. What happens to the one that's inside? It's still valid. You can sprinkle it. So in a place where the intention would invalidate the entire sacrifice. But if you actually went ahead and did it, it does not become invalid.
The first case you're talking about, right?
Right.
The first thing Mishnah's talking about.
So now, makim she'ena machshava peiseles. If we deal with an area which would be the inner sanctuary, which if I have intention to bring the blood into the sanctuary, it does not invalidate the sacrifice. Bringing it in possibly does, before we get to that. But the thoughts about bringing it in doesn't invalidate the sacrifice. Einay din, is it not logical? That I should not make the one that remains outside like the one that entered inside? So in other words, it's like this. If in a place where my thoughts itself are so severe that it would invalidate an entire sacrifice, but nevertheless, if I take half the blood outside, it doesn't invalidate the one inside. So in a place where it's not so severe, the thoughts are not so severe. So for sure the blood that goes inside should not invalidate the blood that remains outside. That's Rabbi Yossi Aglili's opinion, that the blood that goes inside doesn't invalidate the one outside. He's bringing a logical thought that why the sacrifice should still be good. We have 2 cups, one went inside, the one that's outside should still be good. That's how it works if you take it out of the sanctuary, and over there it's more strict. If you take it out of the temple, over there it's more strict. Okay, now, nichnas lechaper afapi shleikiper. If he brought the blood inside to atone, but he does not intone, so puzzle, it's invalid. He just bringing it in. The to atone, the infinitive, is doesn't mean that you did anything. Right. It was an intention there. To atone, but nevertheless, it doesn't have to. I don't know if it has to be the intention either, but it means you brought it in as if that was what you're meant to do. So, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer says it's invalid. Rabbi Shimon Omer Chaper, no, to atone means that you have to do it. You have to atone. Rabbi Yehuda says that if you bring it in by mistake, it's kosher. The Gemara is going to discuss that he's ignoring the discussion. He doesn't tell me, did you sprinkle it, did you not sprinkle it? All he tells me is mistake. We don't know his opinion about the. He changed the subject here. Kol adamim psulim shenasnu al gabi mizbeach. Any blood that was invalid. See where we are? Yeah. That was put on the altar. Lo yihirtze hatzitz. The tzitz is the plate that the Kohen Gadol wore on his forehead. And that he wears the plate. It says that's an atonement. What's an atonement for? It's el al atame. it's an atonement for anything any sacrifice that was impure that we didn't know about, and it was brought, or it was brought by mistake. It was so the tzitz atones for that impurity. Shatzitz meratza ala tamei ve'ena meratza ala yotzei. It only atones for impurity. It doesn't atone for other things, including if the blood was brought outside. It has a specific use. So any blood that was invalid, that was brought on the altar, the tzitz doesn't make it like the sacrifice was okay, unless it was because of impurity. Okay. So we're going on. Okay, Tanya. The Gemara says like this. It was taught in a brisa.
Oh, what impurity means in this case what?
That the sacrifice became impure.
How?
The meat, someone was tamei, didn't realize he touched it, and so it would still atone for the owner because of the tzitz.
So the tzitz is a real powerful thing.
Right? It works. It's effective. It was one of the things that who was it? Someone went to Rome. He saw the tzitz over there. They saw it in the. Remember that? The Gemara Sukkah. It was someone went together with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, I think, and they went to Rome, and the king's, the emperor's daughter was sick, and this demon went inside the emperor's daughter and started saying that only Reb Shimon Bar Yochai could help me. They brought him in, and then as a reward, they said, "What would you like? Take from the storage house, from the treasury." They went in. They saw the tzitz over there. Okay, starting the brayso. I'm Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, "Kal v'chaymer." There's a kal v'chaymer here. Ma b'makim shemachshava peiseles, which is bachutz. The word ma means what, but here it's a comparison. It's just as, or whereas for, just as. Just as in a place where thoughts would invalidate the sacrifice. What type of thought would that be? Bachutz, if it was outside. You had thoughts of bringing the blood outside. But lo yipasal dam shebachutz shebifnim, but the blood that actually goes outside does not invalidate what's remaining inside, right? If you take the blood outside. So makom she'ein machshava peiselas, a place where the thought itself would not invalidate the sacrifice. Why? Because the thought was bifnim, was taking the blood inside the sanctuary. Is it not a kal v'chaymer? Is it not logical that the blood that goes inside should not invalidate the blood that remains outside? Amrulai. They responded back to him. You see, the Mishnah didn't have a response to this. The Brisa has the response. Harei Yomer, it says in the pasuk, Ashayuva midama. If from the blood was brought inside, the pasuk says, any chatas that was brought from its blood, Ashayuva midama, the from. Afilu mixas dama, even if it's part of its blood, even if it's some of its blood. The from is a preposition, right? From its blood. That from its blood is is coming to tell me that even if some of its blood was brought inside, it invalidates the entire sacrifice. So they have a very good response. Rabbi Yossi Aglili said something logical, but they have a verse. Amar lehem, he says back to them, kal v'chaymer leyotze. According to you, so let's use my kal v'chaymer, the opposite. Me'ata, from now, uma b'makim shein machshava peiseles. Whereas, or just as a place where the thought does not invalidate the sacrifice, which is if you have thoughts of bringing the sacrifice inside bifnim. But nevertheless, paisel dam shebifnim b'chutz. According to you, the blood that went inside invalidates the blood that's remaining in the right place. You've just invalidated the entire sacrifice, even though thoughts of doing that would do nothing. But when you actually bring part of it, you invalidate the sacrifice that's the blood that's remaining in the courtyard. So makim shemachshava peiselis bachutz, a place where the thoughts of it would invalidate the sacrifice. Is it not a kal v'chomer that the blood that actually goes outside should invalidate the blood that's remaining inside? If you're going to be strict about the blood that goes inside to invalidate the entire sacrifice, even the blood that's outside, so for sure, where it's more strict, the blood that leaves the temple should for sure invalidate it if the blood goes outside.
Oh, just the opposite.
He's saying, according to you, would have to say the opposite, and you know that the halacha is not like that. Amrulai, they responded back to him, Hari Yoimer, it says in the verse, Asher Yuva, it says that is brought in, Yuva is brought in. Hanichnas paisel v'eni yotzi paisel. If you read the verse carefully, it's coming to exclude that. So yes, what you're saying is logical, but the verse excludes it. Okay. Now the Gemara says, if it invalidates the blood that goes inside, if the blood that goes inside invalidates the blood that's remaining in the courtyard, so utehei machshava bifnim peiselis mikal v'chaimer. So there should be a kal v'chaimer now that thoughts of bringing the blood inside should also invalidate the sacrifice. And it goes like this: Uma b'makim shlei pasal dam shebachutz es shebifnim. Just as where the blood that goes outside actually goes outside the temple does not invalidate the blood that remains inside. In others, you can still sprinkle that blood that's remaining inside. We learned that from the pasuk Asher Yuva, that not blood that the blood that goes outside does not invalidate the blood that goes inside. But nevertheless, machshava peiseles bachutz, but thoughts of bringing the blood outside invalidates the entire karban. Makim shepasal dam shebifnim eshtam shebachutz, a place where bringing the blood inside invalidates the blood outside. In a dinjday machshava peiseles bifnim, is it not a kal v'chaimer that thinking of the blood of bringing the blood inside should invalidate the entire sacrifice? So the Gemara says, no, we have a verse that excludes this. Vayayim mashlishi, on the third day, makim she mishulish bedam bebasar beimurim. The rule is like this: that there are two thoughts that make a sacrifice invalid. One is to sprinkle the blood out of its allotted time, and one is to sprinkle the blood out of its allotted place, out of its appropriate place. Now, there's an extra word, and we learned from that. We learned that it's referring to the description of the place, but there was a time when you were allowed to bring the blood outside the temple. That was in between the temples, in between